MMA Boxing Talk here. This is a prediction video for Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. This is a huge fight for this division. We all know how important this fight is. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 24-0, 8-0 in the UFC. He's 5'10" with 70-inch reach. We know Khabib is a specialist. He's strictly a grappler. He's got one path to victory. We know his game plan. We know what he's going to try to do. And everyone he's faced up until this point has not had an answer for it, despite knowing ahead of time what Khabib's going in there to do, what his game plan is. Now, Khabib, best grappler in the sport. His takedowns are amazing. His pressure, very strong. His top game is probably the best in the sport, I would say. He's got strong ground and pound. I would say Khabib's weakness would be his striking. He's got some holes in his striking game. We saw that in the Michael Johnson fight. His striking defense definitely has holes. His striking itself is pretty sloppy. He lunges in a lot of times. Tony Ferguson, 20-3, 5'11", with a 76.5-inch reach. Tony, very interesting style, very unique, very awkward for his opponents to deal with. He's got so many tools, whether it's spinning attacks, submissions, scrambles. Tony is very diverse, very well-rounded. Tony has more paths to victory than Khabib in any fight, Now, Tony also ridiculous toughness, resiliency, proven world-class cardio. We've seen this guy go 5 hard rounds at high altitude. We know what he's about. Great striker, technical, accurate, lots and lots of shot selection. Ferguson's weakness, well, I would say, if he's got a weakness, it would be his over-aggressive style. At times, that might be able to get him into trouble. He definitely, can't be over-aggressive in the beginning of this fight against Khabib. If he's too aggressive, if he's too chaotic in there, Khabib's going to have more opportunities to get takedowns. And Ferguson doesn't want to be taken down, I've heard Eddie Bravo talk about that. Of course, he wants to keep it standing. Eddie Bravo, of course, is his jiu-jitsu coach, for those of you who don't know. But having said that, Tony Ferguson is not a fish out of the water when he's on the mat. I know Khabib, that's his bread and butter. That's where he excels. But Tony Ferguson is a wizard on the mat. He's got a much, much better submission game than Khabib does. And we've never really seen Khabib, when Khabib has his opponents on the ground and he's pressuring them, we never really seen an opponent throw up submissions constantly and make Khabib work. And Tony Ferguson's going to do that. We know this. Not to mention, Tony has very, very great elbows from the bottom. It's going to be an interesting fight. The beginning of this fight is going to be very, very interesting. I definitely see Khabib winning the first round or two, perhaps. I see Khabib having the most success in the first 2 rounds. But as the fight progresses, I do see Tony Ferguson taking over. I do see Khabib in his fights, he slowly gasses a little bit in his fights. Not a lot. Sometimes, it might not even be enough for some people to notice. But when you lose just an ounce of energy, an ounce of pop, it's going to be a lot harder to get those takedowns. And we've seen, Michael Johnson stuff a couple of Khabib's takedowns. So it's not out of the question that, if Tony can stuff a takedown. I think in the beginning it's going to be tough to stuff those takedowns. But as the fight progresses, I think it'll be easier. Another thing is that, of course, we all know every round in the beginning starts on the feet, standing. And that's where Tony excels, and that's where Tony has a massive advantage over Khabib, is on the feet. You know, Tony's advantage on the feet is much larger than Khabib's advantage on the ground. It just is. I mean, Tony is a great grappler himself, underrated. His submissions, of course, are some of the best in the sport. But Khabib is not on Tony's level whatsoever when it comes to the stand-up. And I really feel that in this fight, we're going to see Tony using his great jab, his 6.5-inch reach advantage. That's a huge reach advantage, especially if you know how to use it and your opponent doesn't have the best striking defense. And we know what happens when fighters get tagged, they get rocked, they get hurt. They lose their energy. They lose that pop. And if that happens to Khabib, it's really, really going to be detrimental to this fight, for him, for his sake. And throw in the fact that it seems like every round he slowly gasses a little bit. He never has that same pop, that same energy he does in the first round, it seems. And if he's getting tagged on top of that, it's not going to be good, Khabib has to take Tony Ferguson down at will. He's got to control him for the majority of the fight. And we don't know if Khabib can do that for 5 full rounds, especially against a killer, a savage, a well-rounded fighter like Tony Ferguson. I mean, Khabib has never faced a well-rounded fighter like Tony Ferguson. I mean, Khabib's never faced a guy. It's the best striker Khabib's ever faced, for sure. And name a fighter that Khabib's faced that has better submission than Tony Ferguson. I mean, there's none. So, I'm picking Tony Ferguson to win this fight. And by no means is this going to be an easy fight for Tony Ferguson. But I definitely see him winning this, And I have him winning 4th round submission. The way I see this fight playing out, in the beginning, Khabib's going to have some success. He's going to get a takedown or 2 or 3 or 4. But as the fight progresses, Tony is going to what's the word I'm trying to look at? Tony's going to impose his will once the fight continues. And Tony doesn't get tired. We know this. Tony does not get tired. He will not break. This guy's had a broken arm in a fight before and continued to fight through it. This is the way I see it. This is how I see it. I see Tony Ferguson winning this fight. Like I said, the beginning's not going to be easy, but I feel that he will impose his will. I feel that Khabib, whether it's him getting tagged or him being, Tony making Khabib work on the ground, I feel he will gas in this fight. And it doesn't have to be, fully gassed, where he's got nothing left. But just enough for Tony to stuff those takedowns, that'll be everything in this fight. That's how I see it. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you guys see the fight playing out in the comments below. If you liked the video, definitely subscribe. Check me out on Twitter as well, at MMA Boxing Talk 1. I'll be putting out a couple more prediction videos for UFC 209. So stay tuned for that. That's it for this one. If you like the video, subscribe. Peace.